Vladimir Putin is unlikely to overcome fundamental structural challenges in attempting to mobilize large number of Russians to continue his war in Ukraine, says the Institute for the Study of War in a special edition of the campaign assessment focused on Russian military mobilization efforts. Now, Putin already conducted at least 4 attempts at mobilization over the past year, likely draining the pool of available combat-ready and willing reservists ahead of the partial mobilization, the think tank says. Now, it started in autumn 2021 when the Russian military launched the initiative called Russian Combat Army Reserve with the aim of recruiting 100,000 volunteers. This effort largely failed, the Institute for the Study of War says. Then there was a pre-invasion call up, then a third smaller mobilization was followed the invasion itself in early March 2022, and then Putin launched the 4th effort at mobilizing his population for war in June 2022 that accelerated in July with the call for the formation of volunteer battalions. Now, the Kremlin directed all of Russia's federal subjects to generate at least 1 volunteer battalion each and pay enlistment and combat bonuses out of their own budgets. This effort has generated a number of volunteer battalions, some of which have fought in Ukraine, albeit poorly, the Institute for the Study of War says. Now, the latest mobilization has been called after Ukrainian forces have recaptured key towns and villages in the northeastern Kharkiv region. As the counteroffensive here also continues, Ukrainian forces are pushing from Kharkiv region towards the region of Luhansk, with the heaviest fighting happening here around the city of Liman. The UK Defence Ministry in its daily intelligence update also says that the lack of military trainers and the haste with which Russia has started the mobilization suggests that many of the drafted troops will deploy to the front line with minimal relevant preparation, and they're likely to suffer a high attrition rate.
The growing global unhappiness with Russia over its invasion of Ukraine was hard to miss at the United Nations General Assembly here in New York this year. In his opening remarks, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that Russia's invasion is exacerbating top threats to human existence, including food insecurity, saying, quote, "We have a duty to act, and yet we are gridlocked in colossal global dysfunction." Almost everyone attending the UNGA agreed with that sentiment. However, what was missing was a consensus on how to move forward and deal with the war in Ukraine. On the one hand, the West seeks to isolate and punish Russia. On the other hand, many in the developing world resent the global push to condemn Moscow as they bear the brunt of high food and energy prices due to the war. During the early days of the Russian invasion, many Western diplomats sought to gain the support of their non-Western counterparts without listening to their concerns regarding food insecurity and the economic disparities that the war might bring. Western countries made it their mission during the UNGA this year to win the hearts and minds of those countries. For instance, the United States, along with the European Union and the African Union, hosted a conference on food security. Also, there was almost a unanimous consensus for reform at the United Nations Security Council, something that many developing countries have been calling for years. They see the institution as being out of touch and unrepresentative. Regardless, challenges still remain on climate, energy, and the global economy. Whether or not the United Nations General Assembly this year was a platform and a venue to move forward and find common ground, at least on some of those issues, is yet to be seen. Susan Tehrani reporting from the United Nations in New York for Euronews.
Urgent action is required to save the rapidly declining salmon population, according to fishermen and ecologists in the Highlands of Scotland. Rod catch figures have plunged, hitting a record low. Ian Gordon has been fishing in the River Spew near Inverness since childhood and now struggles to get as many bites as before. He thinks it's because the herring population is getting already fished out.
Tiny little fly, and I know herring used to be abundant around the coastline of the UK, and that was a species that all species relied on around the UK. And since the herring get fished out, so the salmon, they themselves become prey, you know, and so it's that cycle that gets upset when one species is taken out of the ecosystem.
Multiple factors are behind the decline, including the overfishing of herring and the effect of climate change on the salmon's life cycle.
Yeah, very good. Look at her.
Salmon need cool water in order to survive and thrive. And with tree cover and greater reasonable flows, water remains relatively cool, and that is good for salmon. We need urgent tree planting programs across the headwaters of all rivers in Scotland.
200,000 trees have already been planted along riverbanks by fishery boards who aim to plant 1 million trees by 2035.
Actors and directors from around the world have gathered at the San Sebastian Film Festival in Spain, with the highest award, the Concha de Oro, going to Laura Mora, director of The Kings of the World. In her acceptance speech, she said it wasn't an easy road getting here.
This film was very difficult to make. We worked for a year with this wonderful cast. They taught us everything about life, the difficulty and beauty of life.
A hard-hitting film for the jury, Mora used non-professional actors for the main roles, choosing 5 young men and boys aged between 15 and 22. People who have themselves experienced violence on the streets of rural Colombia. Ra, Culebro, Ser, Winnie and Nano, 5 boys who live on the streets of Medellin. 5 kings without a kingdom, without law, without family. The festival's 2 gender-neutral acting awards went to Carla Quiles for Le Maternal, directed by Pilar Palomero, and to Paul Kircher for Winter Boy, directed by Christophe Honoré.
I really didn't expect this. This is my first experience as a lead in a film, and I'm very happy to be here.
Palomero won her award for tackling the issue of teenage pregnancy in Le Maternal. San Sebastian is one of the smaller A-list film festivals, but arguably the most important for showcasing Iberian and Latin American cinema. Running off a mountain may seem like a bit of a rash move. So then, if you're going to do it, why not dress up as a big squid? This is Le Coup-Piqueur, or Icarus Cup in English. A festival taking place over 6 days in the French Alps, involving all types of flying, with or without a motor. This is the takeoff of the Coup-Piqueur. And this is how pilots take off. Allez! Woo! And this is where it all happens, on the Chartreuse Massive in France. Over the weekend, about 20,000 people are expected to fly here, fly along with the birds. But the weather didn't always play ball for the main costume carnival. Still, there were windows to take off, showing the fruits of weeks of planning, with creators competing for various prizes in a fun atmosphere.
So it's the reproduction of the F-14 Tomcat from the first Top Gun film. With a little novelty this year, Goose is here and he will pilot while I, Maverick, will chill out and watch some of the countryside. The goal isn't to win, we're just trying to make a beautiful structure, make the kids laugh and make the elderly people dream.
And it's not just wacky costumes that draw the crowds. There's film screenings, an exposition for businesses to sell equipment, and displays for kids on the beauty of flight. All of this helps provide a large boost to the local economy.
Yeah, it's a big added value for tourism. The impact on all of the traders who are here, the paragliding schools, the restaurant industry, it has a significant impact all year round.
For the last 3 years, Le Coup-Piqueur has been very limited due to the coronavirus pandemic. But finally, spectators and pilots from around the world can see off the summer in style. This is Raoul San for Euronews on the Chartreuse Massive in France.